Hello viewers, we are back with another session with AKC Capital's founder director Mr. Aditya K. Chopra. Continuing this month's theme, starting your financial journey, we have a new topic, the 50-30-20 budgeting rule. There is a budgeting formula that works for 80% of the Indians. Simple enough to write on a napkin, 50-30-20. Follow this one rule and you'll build more wealth in 5 years than most people do in 20. So the first question is, what exactly is the 50-30-20 rule?
Great. So welcome back viewers to another session. So it's a good question, what exactly is a 50-30-20 rule? Well, essentially if you are trying to get an estimate of your income, and let's look at the post-tax income, then when you break it down, statistically 50% of the post-tax income goes to needs. Something that you cannot live without. It could be your rent, your groceries, your EMIs, utility bills, so on and so forth. 30% goes to wants, something over and above the needs which your mind is always telling you to or pushing you to do. This could be an overseas travel, it could be just buying that car or spending on that luxury watch. And then you have 20%, which essentially goes into savings. So let's take a quick example. If your post-tax income was say 50,000, 20% of that is 10,000. Figure out for yourself, if you were investing this in growth assets, equity assets, over a period of 20 years, the same 10,000 invested monthly through a SIP route, systematic investment plan, would become approximately at a 12% compounding around 99 lakhs, approximately a crore. So it's very important that you keep this basic formula and put it to practice. It may go a long way in term for your wealth creation.
For question number 2 we have, is this rule rigid or can I adapt it to my situation?
Well, that's a good question. So my input here is that this is really not a rigid rule. I think one can adapt it to one's situation. According to a study by World Bank of 40,000 households, people who followed this rule on an average had 2.5 times higher savings than people who didn't. So for example, if you're paying a very high rent or if you have a very high rent to income ratio, maybe you can go for a 70 10 and a 20 rule. 20% is still your savings bet. Or you are higher on EMI, you could still go on a 60-20-20. The basic point here is that you got to save first. Save that 20% and get that into your habit. Secondly, I would suggest is that wants is something over and above your needs. Try to not to fall into the wants trap. First, save that 20% and start investing. It will make all the difference in the long run and give you a positive net worth.
For the next question we have, how much extra wealth does this rule create in over 10 years?
Well, that's a great question, viewers. So we've all been talking about the 50-30-20 rule. So let's assume you were taking home 50,000 a month and applying that 20% savings, you essentially, are saving around 1.2 lakhs a year. So we see the data that people who do not follow this rule or do not have a plan would have savings of probably 36,000 on an average. So you have that additional 84,000 roughly, which invested over 10 years at a 12% compounding can give you an extra 10 to 14 lakhs. And when you look at a longer term compounding over 20 years, that corpus grows to 35-40 lakhs. So you can see the maths, what that savings and the discipline can make a difference. So do follow this rule and start it today.
For the last question on this topic we have, how do I implement this starting this month?
Well, that's a good question. Essentially, you can follow a simple 4-step process. Step 1 is, calculate your post-tax income, right? Once you've done that, then step 2, apply that 20% weightage, 0.2, that is your savings, right? And which you can invest. So this 0.2 into your income, post-tax income, is the amount that you're saving and investing on a regular basis, say on a monthly basis. And it's advised that you set up a monthly SIP on an automated route to do this. Step number 3, take a variable of 0.5 and apply it to your total income. This is what your corpus is for the needs, which is basically your essentials you cannot live without, be it groceries, be your utility bills or EMIs, so on and so forth. Step 4 is what you are left with, which is roughly around 30%. That is nothing but your guilt-free spending, essentially your wants. So this way you can calibrate and implement this rule over a 4-step process. The essential part is setting up an automation on the day your salary hits your bank account goes a long way to curb that non-essential spending and build a long-term savings habit.